I mean, how many people would watch a YouTube of a council meeting, for example?
Not a lot if it's uncontroversial, and if it becomes controversial, a lot.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually checked in one of our meetings in the past, and I think it was 1 or 2 views a couple of weeks later. So
Two, that would be me and Daniel.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
There you go.
Going back to fact check.
Right.
I think we're good to go. This is our whole group now.
Yes, it is.
We lost Mr. Wrench.
I'm sorry about that too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd like to call a meeting to order then. First item of business is approval of the agenda for this evening. Do I have a motion?
I'll raise my hand.
Okay. This is good. So Martin, and do I have a second? Michael, all in favor? It's carried. And second item of business is adoption of the minutes of our meeting of January 20th. Do I have a motion? Kirsty, second.
Oh, why not?
Michael, all in favor. And that's carried. All right, I'm moving to public comments. I don't see that we have any public
No.
with us to comment. So that moves us on to the council referral. Daniel, maybe you just kind of like to walk through this a little bit and just tell us a little bit about the development potential on Bowen. Hundreds of lots.
Hundreds and hundreds. I have a presentation if you want, and I'll talk you through it.
Great.
All right, does that show up okay?
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
So this is a report that staff that I presented to council for information, and council has then referred it to a number of committees, again, for your information, for your discussion and sort of background knowledge. And it was a report we did to look at specifically what development on Bowen can take place without further council approval. So it's saying without rezoning, so without thinking about, okay, what does the OCP say additional growth would take place through rezonings? It's just what is already sort of in the books, what could take place without council's input.
Were you limited to single family residential or just residential?
Residential. Largely on Bowen, it's the same thing, but yes, but any residential. So I looked at vacant residential properties. So properties that exist now that somebody could just build on. We looked at lots within our, what we call our standard zones, so rural residential or settlement residential that could be subdivided. And I looked at 8 different comprehensive development zones that have units left. So those are, the specific sort of rezoned developments that are underway. And then so one of my caveats is, this is showing sort of development potential. It's not showing population projection. Sometimes it gets conflated, but it's not saying that these lots will be developed immediately or when or anything like that. So it can't really determine, what the population growth of Bowen is. It's just saying this is what could take place. And then it doesn't mean that lots will be developed in any immediacy. So one thing I noticed looking at vacant residential properties is there's a total mix of, lots that were just created in subdivision that are still vacant, and lots that were subdivided in the 1930s or 1940s that, somebody bought because they wanted to build their Bowen cabin on it, and, they still own it and still nothing's been built on it. So there's a mix there. But so looking at vacant properties, I took data from BC Assessment that releases it in January based on assessments they did in the summer. And they have a category of vacant properties. And so we can link that to our GIS system and map it. And then we then do another step of excluding lots that are maybe zoned residential but don't have residential potential. So municipal parks that we hold in fee simple that are still zoned residential, or some strata common properties, or some small crown land parcels exist as well that we excluded. So it identified approximately 300 properties that are residential and vacant that could proceed with building permit applications And then just another note from this is I didn't consider as part of this what I would call underdeveloped properties. So there's places in Snug Cove in particular that where the zoning allows much greater development that currently exists. If you think about sort of the houses that come down Bowen Island Trunk Road, could be developed further than they are, but we didn't consider that aspect. And so I broke it down by water, by local service area as well. So that's what this is showing. And that was to help our public works with some of the research they're doing right now on our aquifers. But then this is the overall map of where those vacant properties are. So you see sort of a big mix from, you know, a lot of Cape Roger Curtis vacant properties to one still along like Miller's Landing or in the Scarborough area that are more sort of established neighborhoods where lots still just remain empty. The next thing I looked at was lots that could be subdivided. So these are larger properties that are zoned rural residential 1, 2, or 3, or settlement residential 1 and 2. And to look at this, I just looked at properties where the lot size is more than twice that of the minimum or minimum average lot size. So, and looked at the additional lots that could be created. So my example is if there's a 1 hectare minimum lot size for a 10 hectare lot, I would say it has potential for 9 additional lots. So take the 1 original to make 9 more. I didn't consider other aspects that would be considered at the time of subdivision. So we'd look at, you know, access routes or servicing, so water and septic availability, environmental or geotechnical considerations. So not every lot identified in this map will be able to be subdivided, or they'd be subdivided at lesser amounts than the actual zoning maximum. There's a couple strange quirks, I guess, in our zoning where additional lots could be created. So they have cases where 2 neighboring lots are both each too small to subdivide into 2 lots, but together they could combine the 2 lots to make a 3rd lot. And I didn't consider that. And the other one is that in our zoning, we often have, some of our zones have got a smaller lot size if you're part of a community water system. So there's properties that are not in a community water system and can't be subdivided, but if they were to join or create a community water system, they would now be eligible to be subdivided. But even with that in mind, I identified over 200 lots that could possibly be created through subdivision without requiring a rezoning. And all of those subdivisions would be for detached dwellings as opposed to attached. And then the last one to look at is the comprehensive development zones that have units remaining. So there were 8 large CD zones that I looked at where they have remaining units. I also flagged in there which ones of them have active subdivisions, but I'll note the active subdivisions can create includes ones that were actually completed in December. They just don't show up in our vacant properties because they were created after that July 1st time. So we have 387 units remaining in those CD zones, the largest amount of those being in the Grafton Lake Comprehensive Development Zone, and then remaining in the Cowan Point Zone. And then the final thing we did for a council was to look at what types of dwellings could be created in those CD zones. So the other categories, the lots that could be subdivided and the vacant, are all detached. And in this case, some of our CD zones have provisions for attached dwellings. But what we found is actually the largest category is one, I'll go to the next one. Largest categories ones are zones that allow either detached or attached, and that's primarily the Grafton Lake subdivision. Future phases of that subdivision allow the dwellings to be either detached or attached. And same with some of the areas, and the Cowan Point CD zone again allows for either. But staff would anticipate that probably the vast majority of those number end up getting developed as detached dwellings. So that's what we've seen to date in the Cowan Point CD zone, where they allow either attached or detached as they've been developed as detached dwellings. And then of this number as well, there's 49 of those units that will be developed under terms of a housing agreement. So between Grafton Lake and the Arbutus Ridge development, they have units governed by housing agreements. So this is the map then of those second ones. So lots that could be subdivided and comprehensive development areas that still have units remaining. And that was my overview. So then I'd love to have any questions from the commission.
I'm not understanding what we should be doing with it, really.
Yeah, I mean, it was really to guide, I mean, council, I think council thinking about and hearing throughout the community of, so when it's like potential rezonings, like how to incorporate that when thinking about, okay, if somebody else comes for rezoning, what is still sort of in the books in that sense. So like if somebody comes with a rezoning, council has to think, okay, what's already approved? And so how should that guide what we want to see in future rezonings?
So
I think
yeah, it's great. It's just good. It's good information to know. I'm just, I'm just not sort of understanding why it came to the APC.
Yeah, I think just that it's information like council wanted some of the committees to have in mind when sort of commenting on future policies or future rezonings.
Yeah, that just to add to what Daniel said, I mean, it went to an array, Kirsty, of committees. I mean, the transportation committee to think about, okay, what about future transportation issues? What about connections through trails and so on. So it's just sort of so everyone has who will be looking at development issues has a bigger sense of, you know, what else is out there other than whatever it might be that it's brought before them, sort of thing. And are there any, you know, should we be doing something with this? Is this worrisome, or does this look great? What about the fact that so much of it seems to be detached houses rather than something that's more affordable, and, you know, any issues that might crop up?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting point, actually, David. And kind of goes back to my first question a little bit. Do you know from your study how many multifamily units are potentially within this mix?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of that last slide. It was, so in the CD zones, there were 58 units that would be attached.
Right. Is there a particular typology as well within the CD zone? Like they have to be fourplexes or they have to be duplexes? Or could they be apartments or?
Yeah, I mean, most of it is, I'm trying to think, it's like, so 8 are at the, like the pub site, so the parking lot
Right.
next to the pub has zoning for 8. And then community lands lot 2 and lot 1 both have attached units in their zoning. Primarily, they're just attached, and even lot 2 has zoning for townhouse development, which has a very specific definition, which essentially looks for row houses.
Yeah, I guess I'm asking the question primarily because the issue of affordable housing is the one that comes up most often, and followed by the what is affordable housing question. But generally speaking, affordable housing is housing that is less expensive to construct, and attached units are less expensive to construct than, you know, separate detached dwellings. And so I was kind of curious, you know, if there is more, where that would happen. It sounds like it would happen on the pub site, on the community land site, and I guess on the Grafton site, there's a little bit of potential there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same issue as Kirsty. I just wondered why we were getting it, except it is for information. And I must say, I did find it fascinating. I thought it was a really good overview of the status of development on the island. And I think David's right. I mean, for example, transport and affordable housing are quite linked, because people who need affordable housing typically don't have their own cars, and so public transit. I'm a little curious, you just made a comment in passing, Daniel, about water systems. And in what sense is that relevant to the development potential? Did you distinguish those developments like Arbutus Ridge that are already part of a water system?
Yeah, primarily I was doing it for the vacant lots. So our public works department is looking at doing an aquifer study on the west side, and is looking at, you know, expansion potential between Cove Bay and Eagle Cliff as well. And so part of their planning is trying to plan out, okay, what's the build out within the water systems?
Mm-hmm.
So part of that is saying, okay, well, where are there actually vacant lots within the system?
Okay. Because I see you make a good point in your report. There's just because the land is vacant and somebody could put a house on it, there are requirements for water, septic, all kinds of limitations on steep slopes, riparian areas, and things like that.
Mhm.
So we're actually looking at the maximum at this point, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's interesting. In fact, I think most Bowen Islanders would be quite surprised at how much is available.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you think that there's currently like 1900 units on Bowen, give or take, like, you know. And I think there's only
BC
like
Ferries would be surprised.
yeah.
So what was council's reaction to your presentation? I could watch the video, I guess.
Yeah, you double our views.
Did they have any?
Go ahead, Daniel. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, I mean, I think we had a good discussion, and I think some of them wanted more. And like I would say, like different counselors took different things from it. So I think I remember like one comment from a counselor was like, in her view, we shouldn't be approving more like detached lot rezonings, and we want to see more focus on attached. Is, you know, one comment that I remember.
Yeah, that was for me too. It was the attached versus the more affordable options. Clearly, if this build out were just to follow this way, we would not be changing the demographics of Bowen particularly, and we wouldn't be dealing with the issue that we need to deal with.
But people can get rezoning, right? Some of those detached could be rezoned to include limited amount of attached housing. Isn't that possible? I mean, without committing to it, obviously, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it gives council a sense that in some of the rezonings that might come forward, the importance of having alternative housing forms is really quite clear.
Yeah, that's why I thought this information was useful, because I think we tend to look at rezonings and even subdivision just by considering that particular parcel. And so it might be useful to bring other things into the mix. Although I don't know how fair that is to a developer. If you say you can't give you what you want because your neighbors already asked for it. Anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
But I think that is, I mean, that's a good point. That is part of council's idea, right? Is they'll have a, you know, sense of what the community benefit for the island is, and then want the rezonings to fit into that, you know, provide a piece of that puzzle instead of just being on its own, each one individually.
Yeah, you had Hood Point outlined, I think, in orange, but you didn't mention it otherwise? Or did I misread the map? Unfortunately, the map comes very small on the screen.
I know, it does. It does. It is on there, and I did show the vacant. There are vacant properties in Hood Point.
Oh, there are? Okay.
Yeah.
18.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, I missed it then. Yeah. Actually, it surprises me how many vacancies there are in what I would have regarded as fairly heavily developed areas already.
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking of the map, when I somehow didn't pick up the first time through, Ms. Daniel, but a big chunk of land right at Mount Gardner Wharf. It looked like, I think I just saw. If you could flip that map up again. I was surprised to see that because it's quite hilly right there. Hilly going up that hill. Maybe I misread the map.
No, you're right.
There it is.
Yeah.
Is that very, very fancy estate that is for sale now?
Don't know.
So like Enswell Farm.
It looks like Enswell Farm, but then it goes way up the
Okay.
hill on the north side, or on the south side, which I didn't know at all. Yeah.
I think the other thing I sort of took from just the mapping side of it is, you know, there's not actually, you know, that many large district lots remaining on Bowen in terms of where sort of large scale development would take place. So, you know, each time one comes up for sale, it's kind of a thing of, you know, flag of, okay, I wonder. So like the Enswell Farm property comes up for sale and people call me about it and sort of kick the tires on it.
Well, there's a 47 acre, I think it's advertised at, adjacent to Blue Water.
Yeah.
Presumably that's a single parcel right now, but it would be subdividable and it's not too steep slope.
Yeah. Yeah. Of the like 200 something units in the subdivision count, they're like, I think, yeah, they're a pretty big chunk of that.
Oh, I see. Okay. There's a lot of work, I can tell. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Good to have it done.
All right. Do we feel complete about this item then?
I think so.
All right. This is actually not an agenda item, but it's a bit of a follow-up to Daniel, the work you're doing on the land use bylaw. It's about the lot coverage provisions.
Yeah.
And I don't recall that you have brought to us anything about those, about that particular aspect of the bylaw. It's just because it's come up several times recently for me. Has the methodology for the calculation for lot coverage been the actual methodology, not the cantilevered versus non-cantilevered, but the actual the 100 square meters plus 10%, that has that calculation been compared to other jurisdictions? Because it seems to me quite constraining.
Right. It hasn't. Yeah, so I mean, we talked about changing the definition to exactly capture that cantilevered or not issue. But I didn't consider at all the overall lot coverage.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
is the typical one, Drew?
well, it depends really on where you are. And what's funny about the way it's defined here is the larger your lot, obviously, the more you can cover because you can take 10% of it. But it's like if you took a Vancouver lot, a typical Vancouver lot in the single family areas all through the city, it's about 40%. So it would, if you use our methodology, you would come up short on that. And that's where I think it's a little bit interesting. And I thought that it might be worthwhile to just have a look at, and probably Vancouver's would not be a good comparison. That you'd want to look at the Sunshine Coast or some areas that are more rural, just to see how they're doing it. It's been so long since I did something on the Sunshine Coast. I don't recall. Maybe you know, Martin, do you?
Well, my project is quite urban.
Right.
On the RCMP site in Gibson, so
right.
No.
So I don't know. Yeah, it just it struck me that it feels like it might be overly constraining. It may not be. It may prove to be, fine, consistent.
Yeah, and I've always kind of thought of what I've doing now, although it's dragged on for a long time, as being like step one in terms of like making changes to the definitions and stuff that aren't substantial changes to, what actually people can build.
Right.
And then step two maybe would be looking at things like that in terms of how much people can build or.
Yeah, because it might help the more affordability, on a small lot, being able to do 2 units versus, or, like 1, and maybe they have to get it subdivided, but those are the small lots near Snug Cove or on transportation routes. One would think, that might help the cost.
Yeah, I know that the project on Miller Road has different criteria. I mean, it's what the land use bylaw uses primarily, if I understand it correctly, setbacks, lot coverage, and building height as a way to constrain density.
Yeah.
As opposed to using the FSR FAR kind of provisions. But I mean, it is interesting when you take into, because the setbacks are very large, and the allowable lot coverage is very small, it is kind of interesting what you end up with.
Well,
Yeah, and
also
it's interesting.
accessory structures are quite, they have an effect on, like, decks.
Yeah.
2 feet above, those are counted.
Right.
That is not really typical.
I've been doing an application or 2 applications that are coming to council recently. But one of the things I've had to look at is like how our lot coverage has changed from the Islands Trust zoning bylaw to now. And so in some cases, it's like you get much less lot coverage now in our current bylaw than you did into the Islands Trust bylaw. So yeah, that's one application, but I've also seen it like in Snug Point, for example, a lot of the houses are actually over the lot coverage. And so just any project they do, they're sticking to the same. They can't add anything. They're all over the lot coverage. And I think maybe it affects smaller lots more. So it might be the case too in Deep Bay for people who built under the Islands Trust bylaw are probably exceeding the lot coverage.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And that's, I think, where I'm more aware, obviously more aware of the nature of the constraint, because on a smaller property, suddenly you have a pretty small allowable footprint.
Yeah.
So not that you need anything more to do, but I think that would bear some looking at.
Yeah.
Steph, how are we doing with finding new folks to join us in our journey in the grand?
Well, this actually came up in our, I don't know if you are aware, the council is doing a review of committees.
I was there.
Yeah, of course you are. You were there on Monday. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, so that came up about shifting members. And so in a quick discussion with the councillors and the CAO afterwards, I expressed kind of how we're kind of running out of ideas. It's always been very people come, and we send out ads in the Bowen Undercurrent or the through our normal social media channels. And I also try to get committee members to talk to their networks, because often zoning people know other zoning people, or I don't know, recreation people know other recreation people.
Right.
The word of mouth tends to be very effective. So I guess that's me throwing it back at you a little bit. I don't know a lot of zoning people. It's not my circles.
Yeah, and I don't talk to rec people.
So I will take ideas, but we do little bursts of advertising. There's so there might be a little, yeah.
I've approached a few people, and they all say they're very busy and maybe later. So maybe later.
Is it later yet?
Yeah, I'll get on it, seeing as there hasn't been anybody
Get on
else.
it, Kirsty. Come on. And it's nice to have a mix. And I think I might have some more capacity there after this review, and there'll be a little volunteer appreciation. We really wish we could have a big old party for you guys, but we're planning a little volunteer appreciation token in April. And with this committee review, there might be a sort of a burst of energy that happens then. But I will keep going.
I thought that Melissa had a good idea with consolidation of committees, so we can get the number of committees down somewhat maybe, and cross-pollinate between two, where people might be doing 2 jobs within a broader kind of scope. I know when I lived in, and it's a long time ago now, but in the 90s when I lived for a while in Nanaimo and sat on the Advisory Planning Commission there, and we actually did design review also.
Ooh, okay, so we'll get all those and landscapers on the
I mean, that would be one way to consider, to take the Snugco design panel people and see if they would be, willing to, I don't know. Anyway.
Too many architects, maybe?
Too many architects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you'll be having one-on-one interview with Councillor Nicholson and Kale,
Yes.
and they will have big ol' ears for your excellent experience and wisdom.
Related question, as we're down to 4 members right now, and the standard is 7, what's quorum?
So I'm going to go with quorum is 3,
Okay,
but I'm also not, yeah.
Mhm.
I
We
think
just
getting
have
more
to make
members
sure
would-
we're there.
Hmm?
Is 7 is that just
7
the
is the
maximum?
bylaw.
Oh,
I've
it's
been-
not like
I've-
5 to 7 or something like that, eh?
It's not 5 to 7 or something like that. So what I've been doing when I've been rewriting terms of references or revising over the last couple of years, I've always made sure the language says up to. This particular bylaw does not say that. So
Okay,
I don't know if someone wants.
yeah, but the usual rule of quorum would be 50% plus 1.
Yeah.
Or plus a half, I guess, if it's an odd number, but
Yeah.
so what? We make a decision and somebody sues us for judicial review? I don't
Exactly. We want to be.
I wish we
as
were that
possible,
important.
but
Yeah.
your advisory, yeah.
my concern being that if someone can't make it to the meeting, there's only 3 of us, do we have a quorum? I guess that's what.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, because I wasn't going to be able to make it and I canceled something else. So
Oh,
because
sorry, Kirsty.
yeah. Anyway, no.
Well, now
it's-
you have all this great information now.
Yeah. But if we can finish it, it would be great. And I hate to say
Okay.
that, but I would like to get back to what I.
Okay.
Okay,
Ask your
motion
friends,
to
tell your
adjourn.
friends how excellent land use bylaw is. And yeah.
Yeah.
I'll work on it my end too.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I have to replace David Rynch, I guess.
There you go. That was David's specialty.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and thank you,
Thanks.
Daniel. Interesting.
Thank
We
you.
don't have a date yet for next time.
Well, you've got 6 site reports on the council agenda.
Yes. We'll pull for a date. I don't think we have a date set yet.
All right.
I'm not quite sure
Okay.
what's coming up. Yeah.
Great.
All right. So
Thank you
you.
so much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Have a
everyone.
night. Bye-bye.